Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today I'm here with another special guest, Lakshit Pant, who is joining us today from India itself. Lakshit is the Microsoft MVP Program Manager for the India region, and he has made an incredible impact by managing large scale communities such as Microsoft MVP community, Azure developer community, and many more. Not only this, he has played a pivotal role in helping over 50,000 plus students to learn and build with Microsoft Azure. So, today in this episode, we will hear about his inspiring journey, the challenges and rewards of managing such diverse community. But before that, I would like to thank Lakshit for joining us today in this episode. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us something about yourself.
Hi everyone who are just uh, tuning in for for anyone who is watching this podcast. This is Lakshit Pant. As Summit has just introduced, I work for Microsoft. I've been into community for last I'll say 3 years or more. Professionally 3 years I'll say, but it's been like a 5 years journey since I've started working in communities, started sharing my journey in communities. I'll say it's like this. So it's been wonderful. It's overall, and now community is something that I started by you know by just uh, uh by just the hook because it was lockdown time, it was pandemic time, was when I was looking after something to build my skills and whatnot. And I just got into my first year, it was 2019 if I remember correctly. And I was just looking after building something of my own, trying out something, that I can actually build and share in the public. So I was the very first thing that I started from a community person, I'll say it was LinkedIn, right? So started,
Yeah.
LinkedIn has been really fruitful, beneficial in the entire journey. And from the community per se, I started lately from joining, that time community was very different. It used to be very different. There was no literal, there is no, literally, there was no swags, there was no perks like this
Yeah.
as you see today, right? There was no frequent offline meetups as we see it already today, right? So it was a very different scenario at that point of time. But nowadays it's pretty much different. So uh, but it was fun. I really enjoyed that experience uh, of starting off something from very scratch. And to speak about the, I'll say professional journey in the communities, it's been really wonderful. I have worked with a couple of communities in my entire professional journey. Earlier, I was working with some startup, reskill, got to learn a lot of things from there. There was amazing people. I got a chance to work with amazing people, and there used to work with Meta, Microsoft, and all these communities. And I was especially working or looking after the Azure developer community as a whole. It's a Microsoft sponsored community, and then eventually, right now, I'm looking after the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Program. For anyone, just to give a context, it's a community of all working professionals who are, and these are non-Microsoft folks who are just has been sharing their learning in the community, like Sumit has been doing. So yeah, it's been wonderful to be a part of communities. Yeah, and just looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Lakshit. And we are pretty much sure that by the end of the discussion, we will got to know more about these communities and the impactful work that you are doing. So it's
Yeah,
better to
sure.
start with your educational things first. So could you please tell us, because you pursued your education at Rustam Institute of Technology under the Border Security Force (BSF). So what was that experience for you, and how did it shape your approach for the discipline and the learning?
I'll say it's discipline has always been a part of my life, and I'm not bluffing it out because my father, I'm an army brat. My father works in border security force, right? He has been there in the serving the country for like more than 30 plus years. So it's been really wonderful to be a part of to get migration from RGIT. It was a very good environment. You get to work around all the cadets. It's a really great environment. Your dean is someone who is like a IG from border security force, right? So the discipline has been a core part of my entire life. But I'll say Rustamji, RGIT has given me a lot of things. I'll always owe all my success to the college. Though I have, most of the time, you will hear people, speaking about their college. Though I even, in fact, I got the opportunities, whatever I got the opportunities, these I got on my own wills, right? It was never, provided by the campus. But I'll always say, there was a huge part of, in my success, there was a huge part of my college in my entire success, right? So it's been wonderful to be there, and the discipline, the all my college seniors, and everyone has been so, helpful in the entire journey. And as soon as I just stepped out in the community industry and the community ecosystem, it was like a different world, right? So it was indeed a great experience, and especially for someone, for a person like me who comes from, a hilly region. So I come from a, hill mountain region. It's in Uttarakhand, a beautiful hill station called Nag, right? And it was my first time stepping out of my own comfort zone from my village, my small town of that mountain region, and coming to a city and actually learning, getting pursuing my graduation. So it's
Yeah.
been wonderful, I'll say, and it has eventually helped me out of a lot of things. But I'll say it's been all because of the wonderful people I have always been through. Yeah.
Okay. So before proceeding further, I would like to thank your father, not only your father, but to the entire BSF unit for their selfless work and dedication for the security person. So thank you so much to all of them. Because of them, like we are here safe and we are doing the
Yeah.
great things. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so let's
Yeah,
talk
of
bit
course.
about your technical journey. So could you please start bit by telling bit more about like how the things were started for IT industry? Like what were the initial things that inspired you to be a part of this IT community?
So it was very new and I know unrealistic, I'll say, because if I'll be honest, I just got into tech, I was never intended to be a part of this technical ecosystem. But I
Mm-hmm.
still remember when I got into college, when I was there for the counseling, I was hoping to choose, and I was aspiring for being an electrical engineer. And I chose electrical branch, but I still remember that moment. My father was just standing behind me while I was just filling up the application form, and I was filling in electrical engineering, and he
Okay.
just tapped on my head and said, "No, Phil, computer science is there, right?" I still remember, and probably that was the best decision of my life I ever made. So that's how I got introduced to technology, right? I just got into computer science, and I'll say because it was a pretty unconventional path, because and that's what I say, right, to anyone who aspire to be a software engineer, any if you want to learn anything in technology, right, just do not follow any curriculum. Often people say that if you want to learn, imagine if you want to learn programming, right, you have to, there is a curriculum. I do not know who has designed it, but from years people are actually following. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I believe it's a very slow process, right? Maybe following, maybe first syntax, then if else loops, then arrays, strings and whatnot, then some greater algorithms. I believe there is a very big flaw in this approach, because you are sticking to something that might not be relevant to you at that particular time, right? So I'll say just
Yeah.
try to be more experimental, try to look after how you can build things around that are around you, right? So I was very much curious about how, how when I got introduced about the development part, right? Because I started my journey as a developer. I got to know about development. There is something called development. There is something called HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So on the day one, on the first hour of exploring about development, I just built my own website, right? That's just with HTML and CSS. There was
Mm-hmm.
a very good guy. And the reason why I got to, I never, I got to learn it quickly, because at that point of time in my first year, no one has ever told me that programming is difficult, right? Because at that point of time, no one actually told me that it's difficult. They said, I went there, I had no expectation. I just said, I want to learn this thing. What are you building? He just explained me a couple of tags. He just explained me a couple of things by which I just told him I just want to build this. He told me this is how you can build XYZ things. And then I tried to build it up. And it was like, actually I was able to build it in just 2 hours, right? It was a website. It was a e-commerce website, I'll say, right? So it happened because I'll say no one ever told me that this is tough, right? That was the
Yeah.
simplest thing that I'll always share with everyone. Because after COVID, post COVID, there has been a lot more influencer scenario, right? Even right now we are recording this podcast. I'm not saying whatever I'm saying is it's true and it's gonna work out for you, right? Definitely not. Everyone has their own journey, and try to figure
Right.
out your journey by your own, and just don't stick to one thing. But I'll always say, do not try to focus on just one thing. Just explore it on your own. Try to be more experimental. Try to build out things around yourself. If you are into maybe development, try to build your own website. I always say to aspiring front end engineers, right, who are just in a way, a couple of times I get this query. I'm a front-end engineer. I'm struggling to get a job, and I say, "What do you have to offer me? Right? What do you have to offer any company?" I have this skills, right? When I just go to the profile, the resume, I do not see any portfolio link, with them. And I
Correct.
always say this, right? If you are a front-end developer, if you call yourself a full-stack developer, right? You cannot make a website for your own. How are you going to make a website for a company, right? So just
For a client, yeah.
build something for your own. Exactly, just build some projects. Get actually build some projects. Do not waste your time on the random video courses. Pick up one thing. It's very easy. It's not that tough. It just needs some time, and that's it. You are done. And yeah, this is how I typically started. Just experimenting on things, building on things, and got there. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. And in fact, Lakshit, I also feel sometimes that some of the people, what they are trying to do, they are just following the trend. If Salesforce in a
Yeah,
market, they are just learning the Salesforce. They don't know, like it's better to firstly analyze like what are those things where we can contribute. So it's always
yeah.
better to not follow the trend. Yeah, you can learn that thing also, but firstly, we should make sure that yes, this is something that I can do. So that would be more beneficial.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, and that reminds me of. I just wanted to wrap it up with this one sentence. That
Mm-hmm.
just reminded me of one trend. You will often hear people speaking about PHP and Bootstrap, and they always say that it's outdated, it's no more in the industry. I still remember an incident of like 2 months back where there was an actual, media guy, and he was looking for a PHP developer, and they were ready to pay something around 2 lakh rupees per month for a PHP developer. Because
Yeah.
you do not get good PHP developers, experienced one PHP developers who were actually, who are actually good at, building those kind of stuff, right? Everyone
Mm-hmm.
is rushing after the, recent framework. So I'll say everything has a scope for anyone who make this argument that may put this parameter in that this is out there, this is not working out anymore. Just try, just do not be short sighted, right? I'll tell you that there is a company called Barclays. They are still working on Cobol, right? So there are, in technology there is nothing called outdated and things sort of. So
Correct.
just explore as much as you can. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yes, right. Okay, so let's talk a
Yeah,
bit about your community engagement and experiences because you have managed major tech communities like Microsoft MVP, MLSA community, as well as the Azure developer community. So, what are the
right.
biggest challenges as well as rewards in managing such type of large scale communities?
The biggest reward I'll simply say is it's getting me something to eat, right? I'll say it in a simple way, right? It's I'm getting salary out of it, and I enjoy this, and I'm getting paid out of it, right? And what's the best part could be, right? So in a simple way. So, but jokes apart, from challenges and community perspective, right? So what I believe, community is something that comes from your own, right? It's more of your nudge, your thought, your mindset of sharing your learning perspective, sharing what you learn per se, right? And when you come into that zone, that whatever you are learning, try to put into the community in your own words.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Obviously you cannot be. So if you imagine in such a way that the someone who is working on Python maybe for 10 years, definitely if he'll make a content, if he's having a code, if he's having a course, it's actually gonna be better than you are in some way, right? Because he is having more experience. But sometimes, but not every time people needs the better or needs the perfect code, right? People want something that they can understand in a way, right? Because if
Correct.
you see, there are the Gen Zs now understand the different kind of languages. They are not into their typical books and all, right? So if you want someone to produce that kind of content which is more Gen Z stuff, which is more in a new style, right? So you want those kind of people. So what if if all these new people doesn't are not building those kind of content? So we are missing on a big part. Right? So I'll say it's more about how do you see, how do you are producing content, and just try to share whatever you are learning in the community. From
Yeah.
all the communities that I have managed, what has been very rewarding is the people, I'll say, right? I have, it's been, I'll say I've been so fortunate to work around the best people that I can ever work with. Let it be the startup that I was working earlier before my prior working at Microsoft. Let it be any other community that I was a part of, right? I got to work with some amazing people, and they were always helpful, right? That's what this community brings you, right? So that was rewarding exactly in simpler words. People were actually rewarding. Challenges, I do not see any challenges here in the community. Just that a couple of times you, for anyone who is very, very much, you know, uh, who feel overwhelmed, or maybe who bother a lot about their personal life or a lot about their, work-life balance. I'll say
Mhm.
community is not a kick for you then. Like if you worry about work-life balance, I'll say so just this is not something that you can ever do, right? Or maybe try, this is not something that you should sail upon, because if you feel like you actually want to be a community guy, you should be, you should think of sacrificing a lot of time. You should think of, putting those efforts in that actually community asks you, right? You have to,
Yeah,
be present when community requires, right? So that's something I'll
correct.
say in a challenge perspective.
Okay. And like you have also worked extensively with the Microsoft Azure and have over 50K plus students in order to
Yeah,
learn to build with Azure. So how has this
yeah.
experience shaped your teaching approach or mentoring approach?
I'll say because that's what I said, right? Because you learn from every single person. Doesn't matter if it's a fresher, doesn't matter if it's a, it's someone who is an experienced person, right? And I have eventually I got I've been very fortunate to present in front of everyone. Though they have been presenting sometimes in front of people who had, who has experience, very similar to my age. Right. But
Mhm.
if you see from a learning perspective, from sharing from Azure perspective, I'll say it's been, it's been really helpful because it eventually gave me the stage to present, right? I started learning Azure and cloud stuff and Linux stuff when I was in like somewhere around starting to approach in third year, right? I was just approaching to the third year. That's what I when I got into cloud, got my some certifications. I got certification earlier. That time it used to be very easy, but that time when I was in first year, I never thought of, actually getting those certifications, getting into cloud. But later on, when I realized, okay, this is something that I can try it out, and this is something that could actually that could maybe work out. It was really good. And from mentoring perspective, from my personality perspective, I'll say it's been really great because uh, you meet with a lot of people. You know how to engage with in a different way with for different kind of people, right? You cannot
Yeah,
follow the same approach with everyone, right? So imagine if you're
correct.
working, if you are addressing a student community, they will be more into career aspects, they will be more into exploring the fancy stuff and whatnot, right? But if you are addressing a working professional community, right, you have to be very technical. You have to work upon your niche. So working professionals, if it's about maybe it's about power apps, right? They would only want to listen what's new with power apps, or how I can actually help with something that they do not know about power apps. So I feel it. I'll phrase it like this: I never present something on any session that's already available on internet, right? Because
Hmm.
I feel what's already available on internet, people can explore on their own. I try
Correct.
to put my flavor. So if it's Azure, I try to put my flavor, how one can learn Azure according to me. I just put my experience and everything into it, and that's what I try to share with folks, right? And that's how I think I can bring more value to the community.
Okay. And as you have spent a lot of time in this mentoring and teaching role, and like your work has impacted over 2 million plus cloud enthusiasts. So what you have observed, like what are the common pitfalls or maybe the challenges you have seen in learners that learners face while they start learning about the Azure?
I'll say that, the wrong approach to learn. And it doesn't,
Mhm.
even it doesn't, it's not very specific to Azure, it's for everything, right? So
Yeah.
whenever we speak about, whenever you just go to any person, any random person who is just exploring cloud, you ask them this question, how are you learning Azure, right? And they'll say, I got this YouTube course, or maybe I'm following this link, maybe, a learn document or any, official document that I've
Hmm.
been following up, and this is how I'm trying to, learn Azure. But I believe that's something that's a very bad approach to learn anything, right? For if you, I'll try to solve it with an analogy. If you remember when we were in your, when we were in our school days, when we were into our school days, and and if I ask this question very often to every each person, and I believe everyone should ask this question to yourself. what was easy? I asked this question to you, Sumit. What was easy? Getting, marks in school was easy, or, getting a job was easy? What was easy for you?
Yeah, marks, getting marks was bit easier as compared to, yeah, job.
Absolutely. No, no. The reason is because you have this 16 units defined in your school curriculum, which you
Correct.
are going to learn in next 12 months, right? There is nothing
Correct.
that you are doing or learning apart from these 16 units, right?
Agree.
That's where the focus is. But when you get into the job scenario, when you get into your college, right, you are just, bombarded with everything. Even right now, if
Correct.
I speak about just about Azure, there are more than 200 plus services that people can actually use there. You imagine someone learning 200 plus services and then integration between those 200 services, then respective scenarios of those 200 services, right? So it's even if you just want to deploy just a website on Azure, right? There are odd 10 ways by which you can deploy a website on Azure, right? So what actually, so I always say this, what to learn is not that much important. What not to learn is something that one should figure out,
Completely agree.
right?
Yeah.
Because bec- before you start, try spending some time to decide your curriculum and try eliminating the major chunk that might not be relevant for your use case. So if you
Mhm.
aspire to be a Azure developer or maybe a cloud engineer, right? So there are different types of in category like cloud engineer, cloud architect, SRE, DevOps engineer, different types. So try to figure out, try speak to people, ask GPTs, all these AI tools and whatnot, speak to them and ask this question like, and check what are your aspirational organization and what kind of technology they are working upon. Try speaking, checking their job description and whatnot, and see that like what kind of what kind of products or what kind of stack that they are building upon and what kind of services they are looking upon, and just
Yeah.
try to learn those things, not the extra stuff, because it's like an ocean, right? You cannot learn everything out there.
Correct.
So just try to be very specific about, spend one day, 1 week, 1 month, maybe 2 months, whatever time it takes. Make a curriculum for yourself first and try to eliminate the most part of it which is not relevant for yourself, and do not try to learn. I'm repeating it again. Learn what is required, not what is present. If you will go with the
Correct.
present stuff, there are 1,000 things present in the industry, or maybe infinite things present in the industry, and every day there is new things coming out.
Yes. Right.
See what's required at that particular point of time for you to build, for you to, for maybe for next 1 year down the line and whatnot, and try to just learn that particular thing, and that's it, and you are all set. And for Azure, I'll say it's pretty much simple. Get your Azure credits,
Hmm.
and the best part of learning Azure is, you just go to open this website that we call portal.azure.com. I'm not even mentioning learn document here, and most people, will say, will argue about this, but even not learn document I'm mentioning right over here. But just open portal.azure.com, get your Azure credits, and open the respective service that you want to learn. So imagine if it's a virtual machine, open search for virtual machine, it will open something for you. You will find subscription, and there'll be I buttons there, and it will tell you, there'll be short, definition will be written over there. Just click hover
Okay.
upon it. It will tell you what is subscription. Then there will be resource group. Just hover upon those, those I button. It will tell you what are resource groups. Then come to images. It will tell you. And even if you do not understand that language, this basic GPT prompt will help you. So copy that particular thing. Maybe let's suppose it's image, and try prompting this in your GPT. Explain image in virtual machine with a real time analogy.
Yeah.
With a real time analogy. That's it. Now, what the GPT will do? GPT will connect the, what is image to a real time analogy, or maybe if you want to learn OSI layers, right? Just put in an analogy, explain me OSI layers with a real time example, or maybe imagining me and my friends are sitting in a garden. Now, GPT will tell you a story, and you will eventually learn that story for a longer period of time. So, that's how you
Correct.
build your, mindset and thoughts. So that's a good way to learn, as I'll say. Just
Yeah.
try to build something, just jump on it directly. That's it.
Yeah, for sure. Like if we try to learn things by relating it with the real life example, it would for sure help us to, and it will help us to remember it for the longer time. That's a great way to learn. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So Lakshit, like you have good exposure on this Azure. So, And we all know that Azure provides a wide range of services from compute to AI. So if you had to recommend a few of the services that every developer should be familiar with, then what would they be and why?
The basic, so it's a very good question for anyone who aspire to be a cloud engineer. I'll say you just have to be before instead just directly jumping to the Azure. I'll also share some of the prerequisites that comes
Mhm.
before Azure. Right, should have a basic knowledge about Linux, about the terminal,
Okay.
how terminal works. Should have a basic knowledge about Git, GitHub, how does it works and everything, right? And any other prerequisite that I could remind of. Yes, if try to build maybe before building something on Azure, try to build it locally first. So if imagine if you are building or maybe using a container service on Azure, right? Try to build a container locally first on using
Okay.
your terminal, right? Because that will eventually help you out to understand. Like imagine if you are using a Docker container using Azure, right? Try to build a Docker container without actually using those kind of services and whatnot locally on your terminal. That will eventually help you out to figure out the concepts behind it, how the system architecture really typically works, right? That will eventually help you out. Next thing is, if you are into Azure and if you want to learn a couple of services, I'll say the web service for students, absolutely, it's the gem. You can deploy any website, you can host your website, static website if you want to host. It's a very simple thing, static web services. If you are if you are someone from intermediate background, you should definitely know Azure functions and how Terraform works. You should have a knowledge of Terraform. Terraform is very, very, very super important for any DevOps engineer, cloud engineer, anyone, right? Terraform is super important, I'll say. And then if you there are a couple of things, right? Like Azure DevOps is something that you should also learn, because Azure DevOps is nothing but just to documentation of how the ticket has been assigned, how the pipeline has been working. Then the final and foremost thing that I'll say is more about OpenAI and how to use Azure AI Studio and how to build, because nowadays you get a lot of services where you can actually build a lot of things, right? So just look after how you can build your own Copilot using Azure AI Studio. How can you build your own small LAMs? How can you can actually build your own chatbots using Azure OpenAI Studio and whatnot. That's what I'll prefer, using these services, because that will eventually help you out do a lot more automation in your stuff, right? So you can actually automate a lot more things in your career, just maybe and just actually build something good out of it.
Okay, all right. So that's a thank you for giving this roadmap so that let's say if someone wants to learn and just started with the IT industry, so they can simply follow this path in order to learn something great and good. So that's a
Right.
good thing. Okay, so like we have discussed technical things, so now it's time to talk bit about your personal experiences. So as you have
Yeah.
shifted to Bangalore recently, in fact for your job purpose, and we all know that Bangalore traffic is infamous. So as someone deeply involved in this technology area, do you see any tech-driven solution that could help to alleviate these kind of issues in Bangalore?
Yeah, there is, eventually the government is also really working very hard. I see, it's very rare to see government working this hard on working on a respective problem. But I see the government is pretty, quite proactive here in, Bangalore. And there are,
Hmm.
some really good startups, hackathons going on by MSME hackathon, by a lots of,
Okay.
so all the hackathons that are happening around in Bangalore, I always see a problem statement there that, which can, and every hackathon eventually has this problem statement of solving Bangalore traffic, but
Yeah.
it's not something that you can just do overnight. It's a long step process. You have to analyze a lot of things. And it's not like a star or the just you can just apply any algorithm which is
Correct.
better and whatnot, right? It's not like that. There are things working out, but there was okay, I just forgot the name of that startup, but they were building. They are a part of Microsoft Startups program, and I know them very well. They are a part of. They are from these people are actually from Kerala, some local regions from Kerala. And what actually they are trying to build a similar tag system. So imagine we have this what do you call the card? The tool card. What do you call? I forgot the name. The tool card.
The
I
fasting?
forgot the actually. Yeah, the
Fasted?
fast tag. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're actually building something very similar to fast tag. So you just put on your car and you get time allotment. So you just set up your preferences. So imagine if you are a regular person going from X place to Y place regularly for maybe next 6 months, 8 months, right? it's not
Mm-hmm.
that you every day you are just going to random places, right? Most of the people living in Bangalore are here for the office work, and are here for
Right.
their their work, right? So your purpose is defined most of the time, right? I'm not saying it's defined all the time, but most of the time it's defined. So what these people are actually building, so you just you get a time slot for you through some AI based algorithm. They have almost tried and tested it out with approximately 20,000 vehicles. And what they are actually doing is they have given a slot to these 20,000 vehicles. What's the best time for them to, get out on the road to reach their office? Right. So that I believe that's a really good solution because you get a particular time slot, even and what kind of speed you should maintain. So everything is
Okay.
worked in a very structured manner there. I know for a country like India, it's very difficult, it's very tough to maintain. But if we see in a longer run, I see a greater significance of that product if government supports that product, because eventually right now they are getting a good support from the industry. Microsoft is also backing them, but there is yet a lot to be, improvisation is required. But I believe that's a really good solution that I have explored in all these years. It's and now a couple of people will also have this question: what if I today I make a random plan of going somewhere else and whatnot, right? It's not that you are very much, you are sticking to that respective slot and whatnot, right? But if you add 1 hour prior, you get some incentives, you get some benefits, you get some points. By they also offer you some kind of vouchers and whatnot, right? So it's a kind of great incentive forum plus whatnot they are kind of trying to build. And I believe this is a good initiative which can eventually help people out, right? So this is just that I do not know if can it eventually work or not, but I believe it's a decent one which can eventually help solve the problem to some extent, I'll say.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now, Lakshit, like we all know that somewhere, being a maybe Uttarakhand citizen, the rituals, how it is impacting or how it is beneficial for us, and you are practicing these things, right? So, do you find any parallels between the spirituality and technology, especially in terms of connecting with people and building the communities?
Absolutely right. When it comes to this nudge or this passion of building communities, or it's all coming from my birthplace, because you see it's very we still if you go to Uttarakhand, right, you still eat in those you still sit on the ground, you still eat with your hands, you have a great community, everyone will serve you food and whatnot. So this is how the
Yeah,
community gathering are used. We practice there, right? And it's a very when it comes to spirituality, if you see, I do not want to connect it with spirituality, but I want to
hmm,
connect it in a way that the kind of the scripture that has been written and the kind of it has it we have seen it multiple times, right? Let it be the example of Pythagoras theorem, let it be anything, right? We have seen that kind of example, that those kind of things were always written in our were always a part of our ancient culture, right? If you
correct.
see
Yeah,
all the nakshatras that we have in in the Indian you know uh, ancient scriptures and whatnot, right? These were always there was no concept of telescope and something like that, right? But they were eventually
correct.
able to calculate all the pinpoint dates, everything, right?
Exactly.
Everything is even that even every second is defined by in all these we call something called panchang, that's a Hindu calendar that we follow, right? Everything is
Correct.
predominantly defined there, right? So how they did it, it's just basic, the kind of practices they used to follow, and that's just kind of a rich culture, right? You know that eventually tells us that you have a greater depth to explore, just try to explore a lot of things, right? So I always see it has a greater significant role played especially in my journey, played a significant role in my journey. I always say just connecting, always stay connected to your roots, because that's something that always makes you feel gratitude, always keeps you humble, stay grounded and whatnot, right? So and I always enjoy it. It's a peace of mind for me, right? So I always do all these practices and whatnot. So yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so although like Lakshit, we have many things to discuss here, but just because of the limitation of
Yeah.
time, I would like to ask my last question. It is related to your mentors, or maybe like who has been the most impactful mentor or role model in your career?
A lot of people, right? That's what I said. I used to, from the, there are kind of mentors who there are kind of people. who never knew that I was, imposing them as my mentor in a way, right? So I remember this, uh, this the senior of mine. I never met her. She even didn't knew that I used to follow her. There was this girl called Simran Suri. She used to do, while it was a lockdown period, she used to do a lots of, community activities. She used to do a lots of campus ambassador programs. She was very active in all these campus ambassador programs. And I used to look out, how she's getting all these opportunities and how being a part of MLS, how she's getting a part of dog community and whatnot, right? And I used to do my own research. Okay, this is something that exists. This is kind of community that exists, right? And I used to follow her. And similarly, I used to follow a lot of people in my entire journey, right? So there were mentors, there were like, I also shadow mentors kind of stuff in my life. But there are no, I have been very fortunate, while I was working with, Reskill, the people there, the reskilled people has been really, amazing. And they actually helped out me a lot in my journey. And, I owe them a lot with, let it comes to, the personal, branding stuff, whatever, right now I'm able to speak like this, like so fluent in this podcast and everything, right? In multiple aspects, in
Yeah,
providing opportunities per se, they've helped me out a lot. So
yeah,
this choose out also those people I'll say, right? So Rohit sir, Asghar sir, Puneet sir, everyone, right? They has been so kind and so humble to help us out, and just create that kind of environment where you do not feel like a senior and junior, right? You just feel like a family. And there are some amazing folks like Sanya ma'am. Then there are a couple of, so I have also done a couple of recorded a podcast. So there are people like one of the MVP I still remember. His name is Nicholas Blank.
thank you so much, Lakshit, for joining this podcast and for sharing so much information related to the program and the Azure. Thank you once again for being a part of the show.